Here in the great Northwest, the place that these skillets I've shown you came from. We're here at the United Electric Cooperative. Jim Badgley, the director here. Thank you so much for the hospitality.
Oh, thank you for coming. We appreciate having you up here.
I tell you, I talk about this every week, but this right here, the best co-op gift ever. Ozark border folks should look very closely. You can do better here. But no, it's on a serious note. It's really great to be up here, get to talk to actual regular folks outside the cab, outside the cities here in Savannah. It is amazing. I think, because I got up here a little early this morning. I think folks take it for granted almost, the footprint you have of rural broadband. Where is the broadband footprint out from Savannah?
So from Savannah, we go north, actually just across the Iowa line,
Wow.
all the way down to just north of the Kansas City Airport, over to Excelsior Springs, and pretty quickly Richmond, as far over as Richmond. So from my front door where I live at Maryville, it's well over 100 miles to the end of where we cover with fiber.
Wow. And it's amazing. I've seen some folks have talked about you even coming into St. Joseph at their request.
Yeah. We had a lot of desire from people wanting us to come to St. Joe. Mm-hmm. And as a company, we actually need to get to a point where we're big enough to handle that, because that's a big undertaking.
Sure.
And we've been very successful everywhere we've been, mainly because we're a local company and can take care of people. Well, we didn't want to sacrifice that, until we were ready to go in St. Joe, to make sure we didn't sacrifice that. And any project we take on, being owned by United Electric Cooperative, has to be a benefit to our members financially. We can't gamble with their money. So it has to be a sure deal. And right now was the time for us to go into St. Joe. It's a big market.
I tell you, it's an amazing thing. I was talking with Pat Conway for the show this week. Every innovation, it feels like that's happened, going back 100 years or longer, has driven people out of rural areas to the cities. Rural broadband to me is the first innovation that can let you move in the school district you want, live the rural way of life you want, bigger house. You can be 30 minutes to the airport from here and have a job that can sustain your family. But it's that one thing you have to have. It's not a road, really. You can dig you a well. You can put your septic tank in if you don't have public sewer. The one thing you have to have is that fiber.
It is the equivalent of half a swimming pool on a house in value to have fiber broadband at your house. But we saw this when the pandemic started. We anecdotally, we've seen stuff all the time. We had one grandmother whose kid's family moved back from Minneapolis to her home up around Hopkins, Missouri, because they could actually go to school online there, take their dance lessons where she had broadband, and they could actually live around there, where even like in Minneapolis, they couldn't do those things. They didn't have the capability where they lived around there. We've seen it increase our electric load. We've seen it save neighborhoods and save communities, really.
Yeah. So let's talk a little politics. It's so great for the show this Sunday. I've on Senator Eric Schmidt, who got to sit right there in that chair, and we sit and talk everything. We also did the deal where we got to go through his game as a base clearing triple from the congressional base. He was able to, and I've always told people I thought he'd be a good senator, and I meant that. And you see the money he's bringing in for Whiteman and Fort Leonard Wood. That is money that it takes. You have to go twist the arms and get. Yeah. But I'm not sure at the end of the year, even if he pulls up a couple more of those, his best accomplishment of his first year is not going to be that triple in the congressional baseball game.
Could be. He was
so proud. We went through, we did like a box in-game analysis of the triple, what was going through his head, the practices. It meant a lot to him. I thought it was kind of cool. You'll get to see, I think Kelton or I is going to splice in the overlay of the video. Sweet. I would not have any clue to do that. I mean, I could sit at that computer for a long time and not figure that out. But tell me about the politics up here in Northwest Missouri. It always felt to me like you had Pat Conway here was sort of the bridge. You had very loyal Democrats. And then like a lot of rural Missouri, you've seen the Congress go Republican. Mm-hmm. Then you saw state rep and senators go Republican. Then you saw the courthouses. And it went from a reliably Democrat place to pretty darn reliably Republican place up here now, right?
Pretty much. Where you're sitting right now is our Savannah office, and our other big location is Maryville. In those two counties and in most of our footprint, maybe some of the only footprints left in America where Jeff Farnan and Dean Van Schork, both farmers and small businessmen. Our state senator, Rusty Black, an ag teacher, retired ag teacher. Our congressman, Sam Graves, a farmer. The governor, Mike Parsons, a farmer. The lieutenant governor, farmer. This is probably one of the few areas of the country that you can go right up the chain of our political leaders, and they all understand our way of life here.
Tell folks about Jeff. He's new to Jeff City.
Jeff's doing great. I mean, he's a longtime member of ours, a member
He
of the.
just gets it. You know what I mean?
Well, he's ran a small business, successful small business for many years, along with the cattle operation. He's a small town guy who gets the real values and the way the world really works.
I just, you know, I always tell folks, I'm fortunate to meet a lot of folks who want to run for office. And I'm always like, you know, it's a terrific honor to win. And it is,
Yep.
there's an element of public service. I'll never forget as long as I live. I watched Todd Richardson once, had a special session. And Todd Richardson was watching his son's baseball game on FaceTime. And I'm like, you know, I get it. We all want to kick a politician sometimes. A lot of times they deserve it. But there was a guy who Todd Richardson could have been making infinitely more money as an attorney doing other things. Him and his wife had a beautiful family. He watched his oldest son's little league game when he was up to bat and got like one of his first hits or maybe a home. I don't remember what it was, but watch him sitting on the sidewalk in Jeff City, watching that on his FaceTime. That is that's a sacrifice. That's
Yes,
real.
It is. Yes,
And those guys, when you get a guy like Jeff, I always say, guys, run when you got your life in order. Run when you got your money right. Run when you got your kids in a place you can run. Your wife's all for it. Don't run when you're too young because it limits how good a job you can do if you don't have your life in the right position for it.
Oh, I totally agree. And like I say, before Jeff in this district up there, we had Alan Andrews, a similar story, a small businessman who got the rural way of life and what it took to run a successful business and grow an area. We're blessed with a lot of the representatives in our area.
I'll tell you Alan Andrews' story. I went and seen him once in his office, and I have to watch my tongue sometimes. And it reminded me, you walk into that guy's office, and there was just a presence Alan Andrews has of a good guy.
Yes.
Of like I don't know if it's like his presence is a lot like integrity. When you sit in a room with him, you just know you're in the room with a guy who's a godly man he's just got that integrity about him. And I'll tell you, there's a different. It's almost a presence the guy has when he walks in the room that you know that guy's got it together, and he's just a good guy.
He is. And, if you go, he's from Grant City in Worth County. I mean, you don't get more rural anywhere than Grant City.
They got a dollar store now.
They do.
They ain't got a McDonald's, but they got a dollar store in Grant City now. They got a dollar store everywhere.
You know what else they got in Grant City right now? Broadband.
Well, we got to cheers that.
Yeah, there you go.
Not bad at all. So politics up. You got a new talent, Maisie Boyd from Maysville, represents over a little bit like Hamilton. Now, is that in your area?
Yes. Yeah. Well, not the Hamilton area, but she represents Worth County now. They've split the district. Yeah, so she represents Worth County, and
smallest county in the state.
Yep. Somebody that we really like to keep in touch with because we think she's going to be, doing things for a long time.
I don't know what she's going to do, but whatever she does, it's going to be fast with a lot of talent.
Yep. A local person. She went to St. Joe Christian Academy down here for high school. We have staff members that went to high school with her. I feel old when I go in to talk to her. The first time I went in, we took one of our employees that played basketball with her, and they got talking about playing basketball. And I've got kids older than both of them. I was like, but she's smart and aggressive and driven.
Yeah, she knows wherever she's like a rocket. Wherever she's gonna go, she's gonna get there fast, and it's gonna be a big bang.
Yep.
Tell me about it. One of my favorite places in Northwest Missouri is Hamilton.
Yep.
I mean, what a cool place. I mean, the quilting industry, which I wouldn't even know what that was, has blown up, and I mean, just a terrific story and the pride folks have in Hamilton.
Yeah,
I love it. It is a great place to go for the day.
You see that a lot in Northwest Missouri, especially because people up here. They're self-resilient. They rely on themselves and their community to do something. Yeah, a lot of you're not close enough to a larger city. A lot of times, you have to be self-contained, and with that comes a lot of community pride. In Maryville, where I live, you can look at it in the state championships the high school wins in football, volleyball. It's track. It's the smallest school in the conference, but it's one of the most successful schools in the state because that community pride. Everybody takes part. The public school is the center of attention. The kids all go take part, play whatever sports in session. You get a good team and whatever. You don't see that everywhere.
It is. It's really hard. I almost think it's easier for urban politicians to understand rural Missouri than suburban ones. Yeah. Because like you go to South City, St. Louis, you go to a lot of places in Kansas City. Those are communities. Now, maybe they're evolving or changing, but you could hearken back to a time that there was a community there at different places. And just frankly, the newness of a lot of suburbs makes it hard to relate to a place that has the history they draw their pride from.
Oh, exactly. I mean, we're blessed in this area in our service footprint. Now we don't serve electricity in the two communities, but we actually have three state colleges, universities in our service territory that you wouldn't think. You have people who have been here generation after generation. Um, the families know each other. They farm together, work together. Businesses have been passed down through generations, and it builds something where you care about where you're from, and you want to make it better. And I think that's part of why we've been successful in the fiber business, broadband, because people like something local. Something local, so they think, the people that work for us here at United work with me. That's a great team that works here. They're from here. They go to church with the people we're serving. Their kids go to school together. They coach them in Little League. You don't get that in a large city. You don't go in the grocery store up here and not talk to five people you know. And that, what they say, sunshine's the best antiseptic. So even as a politician, a couple player, or whatever, you're going to see people and they know what you do. So, you do the right thing because you care about the people you serve.
It is just it's, I don't want to say it's, tell you, Alan Andrews, with that, look at the business he's had and how it's evolved. I mean, it's not a simple way of life. It's just vastly different and sometimes hard to explain. I'll tell you, let me ask you one question here, because I worry about this. You get some old boys from the suburbs. It's in their DNA and ethos to push hard and yell and scream, kind of be angry, frankly. And you get some good old boys that'll sit and be like, well, I mean, if he really wants it that bad, maybe we give him a little, and we don't demand ours. When it comes time to demand ours, like Maz with the tax credits,
Yep.
You don't see the suburban people around. And I tell you, I wonder if, I've said this many times, I wonder if we're not too nice.
I wonder, because it is in the DNA, because when you live close with people for generations, you have to figure out ways to get along and work through things. If you have a different political view, you have to work it out. You're in a small area, you can't get away from each other. We're together. So I'm not into the Jeff City scene as much as you, but I could see where that'd be a problem, because we're people that look for results, not for a headline. So sometimes, you're not looking for the splash, you're looking to get something done, and that might lead you down that path, but I like the fact we put people of integrity, like Brenda Shields, Jeff Farnan, Dean Van Schuyk.
What a great legacy the Shields family has up here.
Oh,
My goodness.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy, it's a little bit of a different aura. When Charlie Shields walks in a room, it's almost like everybody calms down a little bit.
Yep.
Like you can be a 10 on 10 angry, and if Charlie Shields walks in, he just has it together, and you almost just get calmer because he walked in the room. You know what I'm saying?
You really feel like somebody's there that knows what's going on.
Yeah.
You just got that ambiance, not to use that word, or something. When he walks in, you just feel something like this guy knows what's happening.
So I asked Pat Conway this. Democrats used to do well here.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to do to turn that around?
I think you got to address rural issues, and rural issues aren't, I think that, get back to that, they're not solved by a headline. They're solved by actual action. People around here, clean energy, something people in the city talk about.
It actually comes from here.
Yeah, it actually comes from here. The people they attack, but you drive between here and Maryville, you'll see a few hundred wind turbines with more on the way.
I got a different theory about that. We diverge on that. I think we all get our information from our phone now.
Yep, I agree.
Highly nationalized. I've seen ticket splitting in what Missouri prided itself on being a bellwether state.
Mm-hmm.
It is no longer. What Pat say? Nixon carried Buchanan County all 3 times he ran.
Yep.
All while they were electing Democrats up and down the ballot, other places. I think all over the country, ticket splitting has went to nothing.
Yes.
You show up and you vote your party, and maybe that, I think Jay Nixon may be the last politician in this state that mastered ticket splitting to get Republicans to cross over in numbers. I know that McCaskill did in 12, but that was a bit of an anomaly, right? There were some other factors there that I think help with that.
Yeah.
I really think Nixon will be the last politician for this in the short term, Republican or Democrat. They can get you to come over. I don't know that the Democrats' social issues, I think, and we can say, well, that's silly. That is what people should think more. The fact of the matter is, most people don't, if you're not pro-life or pro-gun, they don't care what else you are.
Yeah.
And if you're not the most pro-life candidate or pro-gun candidate, they also don't care. And until that mentality subsides, I don't know that a party that doesn't start off with your social issues will ever win.
It's a different world than even what it was 20 years ago by far on that. That's why it's like the electric. One of the great things about being an electric cooperative, then going into rural broadband, is we garner support from both sides of the aisle. We see bipartisan, support on issues when you don't see bipartisan support on many things. Issues like that could draw people together if it's something, and hopefully they look at things like that. We've been lucky that our issues and our policies have drawn attention the right way. But yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. I mean, most places in Missouri or the nation, that is, the primary is the election.
Yeah, and I think, I think that's probably. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah.
Everything changes. There was a
Oh,
time
yeah.
Democrats. I had this great experience. My local state rep, Mark Richardson, let me come to the Capitol with him a couple times, and he was in the term limit class, right? And you could feel it in the air. There was a feeling in the air as all those guys were being term limited out. See, half the senators were term limited the trajectory before. The House members that had been there for however long, Mark, I think only been there for 12 years, but you could feel there was a change. There was a different breeze blowing through that place, and watching that everything changes. It really was one of the best experiences he had. Let me see that. I mean, you had some Democrats that couldn't foresee a world that they weren't in control. It never would have occurred to them
No.
at some point that in a very short amount of elections, they would not only be out of control, be a supermajority of the Republicans, which was just mind blowing. This will change. I wonder what it changes to.
I really don't know. I can go back to my childhood growing up in Southwest Missouri, and it was pure, for a long time, it was purely a Democrat, rural blue dog area. Ike Skelton, Gene Taylor were your congressmen, and then it changed. The issues are what change things and change people's perception. And I think at the end of the day, people will go to who they think is listening to them. If they don't think they're being listened to, it won't take very long for that to switch. Now, you never see it coming. In 2013, 14, I was going to a lot of events where national political pundits were saying the Republican Party is dead as a national party. After the elections, they said the demographics will not support it. You had a lot of immigration that they thought would be total Republican.
From a national standpoint, though, I don't think either of the two major parties, they're such ingrained in law that they're going to be there. But I think you see different parties, and that's what I think the innovation is going to be. The Republican Party, as it is now in the state of Missouri, I mean, look what the changes since the supermajority came in.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd have came in, you would have been pro-public schools. You would have been pro-life, pro-gun, been pro-tax cut. You'd have also been pro-tort reform.
Yeah.
Well, now, being for your school is an issue in the suburbs. Being pro-tort reform is totally gone. I mean, in the suburbs, you're seeing the majority of your suburban legislators are pro-trial lawyer.
Yeah.
Now, again, I think you make good arguments both ways. But the fact is that was a tenet of the Republican Party that is just no longer the case. You see trial attorneys meeting and supporting Republicans, and what I thought would happen. I just thought, oh, they'll tell those lawyers they're going to be for them, they won't be. But no, I've seen them tell them that, and I've seen them stick, which mildly surprised me a little bit. You know what I mean?
It always comes down to the issues. But realistically, how many people do you know, Republican or Democrat, actually agree with all their party's platform?
Yeah,
they're looking at one or two issues. They're not looking. The average Republican doesn't really think about tort reform.
I agree with you.
The average Democrat probably thinks more about right to work than they do tort reform. Either way,
yeah.
I mean, there's just a few issues
that
it's
people practical to their life.
Yeah, it is.
Issues that actually matter to them.
Exactly.
That's an interesting thing. You look around. You got Rusty Black in the Senate now.
Yes.
You got Tony Luetkemeyer, who maybe moving up as a judge. It's possible. Interesting time. Who do you see as some of the next wave? But we talked about Maisie. Who else do you see up here? Somebody keep an eye. County level doesn't matter.
It's hard to say. We have a lot of qualified people.
You have to twist Kyle White's arm at some point to run for office.
Yeah, and that's somebody that could do it.
He would be good.
Yeah,
he came down here. He would know what buttons to push, how to maneuver things.
I've got a young man working for me that I'd like to push into it at some point, Joe Hageman. I don't know if I told him that.
I've heard that name somewhere before.
Yeah, it's a good name here. Yeah. But, a local farm kid, went to Northwest Missouri State, worked for Congressman Graves. Smart kid, worked for us, doing great work. I think you have a lot of good young professionals in Northwest Missouri that people would not, not even think about, who would do a great job, at this. So I think it's just, finding somebody who has the aptitude and the time and can afford to do it. Those are the challenges. Like you say, being a state rep, it's hard to be somebody, it's hard to have a family at home and go do that. It's a personal sacrifice. You got to have somebody who can make the sacrifice. Or even like in Alan Andrews' position when he was in, it was a family business. He had family who would help him when he was gone. Jeff Farnan has a business. He has family who can help him in the farm and stuff. You got to be in a position in your life where you can do it. But I fear that honestly, social media and every little thing being analyzed about everything you do in your life is driving away a lot of good candidates.
Well, I mean, hell, before I let you go, I got to talk about Trump a little bit here. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I feel like there's a lot of folks, Northwest Missouri and Southeast Missouri, Trump could be elected emperor. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But you get your Southwest Missouri, Northwest Missouri, a little more fundamentalist religion, a little more. They don't have 3 ex-wives. They don't wear their money. They don't drive their money.
Yep.
I think he definitely connected with them folks. Every Republican voted for him. A lot of Democrats became Republicans and voted for him. Part of it was that brash, just tell it like it is style.
Yep.
That worked. He had a real special connection to the state. I mean, just look at the votes. He just did. Now that was tarnished after 4 years. Nobody gets more popular usually, except Reagan. Trump did not get more popular in Missouri 4 years later.
No.
I think there was just the weight of his constant, drama was starting to wane on some folks. Then they started arresting him every other day. And I tell you, I think there's long-range problems for that, arresting the guy. When you're arresting your political opponents, if we were waiting this on the news and it was Nicaragua, we'd be like, oh, those poor people.
Yeah. Yeah. Without getting to the legalities, which I don't understand, in this part of the country, I'll say this, people basically want to be left alone and treated fairly. And if they feel like somebody else is not being treated fairly, they will empathize.
And their preferred way of being treated fairly is being left alone.
Being left alone. So, I don't know how people will vote, but I think, not being a political strategist.
Well, I think they're all going to vote for the Republican nominee, whoever it is.
Yeah.
I don't think Joe Biden will run as well as he did here last time, frankly. Like that, the thing about becoming less popular sticks. I think he'll struggle. Yeah. But I do think that, and I'm not sure how much of it's a microcosm of the country, but I think there's a real issue. You don't think, when you say Donald Trump, you don't think statesman. You generally think jerk. You might think effective president. I mean, he has a great resume of his time in office. If you just looked at him on paper, you'd think he's wildly popular. But, there's the part of his personality that comes off, we'd call it, like in Westmoreland County, he'd come off like a jerk. And so I think when you break it down, even that guy, who you would think wouldn't be a statesman at all, didn't charge Hillary Clinton. Yeah. Now, do I know she broke the law? No, but I will say this, just my observation of this, you could have charged her if you'd have wanted to. Yes. Somebody in his least statesman-like administration said, guys, that's not the way to do this. And they were right, I think. And I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton, but I don't think she'd have been charged with a crime.
If he'd have charged her, that's all his administration would have been about. They got a lot done in 4 years.
A lot.
If he'd have got drugged down in that, you'd never seen the tax code change. Or many of the other things.
You know what? It would have embarrassed this country. Overall, I think probably what she did was wrong. And maybe broke the law. That's certainly possible. It was the right thing to do for this country. Somehow, in Joe Biden's administration, a guy that you would instantly think, what a statesman. Nobody in that administration has said, guys, that's not what we do here. Now, do you tell me Donald Trump may have broke a law? I don't know. Maybe. You could convince me of it, probably. Was it the right thing to do for this country? For every Democrat prosecutor in the country start getting their name in the paper filing charges? No. Do I think paying off that porn star was wrong? Wrong, yes. Illegal, no. Do I think having them papers in his house? I'm sure Trump shouldn't have had the papers. But when you find him in Biden, somebody should have said, Mr. President, Trump screwed up, but we did too. And so if you do that, it just, to a common sense person, you're like, well, you're not charging that guy.
Yeah. Well, and it just kept it's free press for him too. It keeps his name. He's now seen as a victim by a lot of society, and people. I
actually see him the least sympathetic person I can think of. I see he's a victim.
Yeah, and people tend to side with victims.
Well, I think too. I mean, for you to feel sorry for Donald Trump is a damned accomplishment. I mean, how do you feel sorry for that old boy? But I think when they just keep arresting him and all that, now I'm like, now come on. Like, do I think he was looking for votes in Georgia? Yes. Do I think Al Gore and Bush were looking for votes in Florida one time? Yes.
Yes.
Do I think Lyndon Johnson straight up stole votes in Texas? Of course I do. Do I think it's wrong to call down there and pressure a guy to give you some votes? Yes, it's wrong. Do you put him in jail for it? Probably not. I don't think that's right.
No.
I don't think any of this stuff is what you should go to prison for. I think that again, I hate to say it, the least sympathetic person I can think of, I'm like that. He's getting a raw deal.
You know, you can go back to Kennedy versus Nixon, you know, for this type of, the vote being close, and
Did Kennedy look for votes in Illinois? Yeah, he did.
It's just a slippery slope once you get on that, and you just gotta, hopefully we can start concentrate on more issues, as that comes up, because
I think it's bad for the FBI and the federal law enforcement people. It's bad for our country's reputation. I think it erodes faith in institutions. If an FBI or a United States attorney came and said something, I would start off believing it.
yes,
And after this, I'd be like, let me think about it. And I think they still have a lot of credibility. I think people still believe them, but I don't think it's overall helpful. I think you'd have a hard time convincing me that the overall health of the country is served by charging him with 80 crimes or whatever.
Well, let's just assume that the FBI has done nothing wrong. What matters is there's a big part of the country that thinks they have and has lost faith in them. The actions are one thing, but the trust that people have in those institutions is damaged. However it happened.
Even if you convince me he did what you're saying he did, I'm like, that doesn't feel right.
We get being an internet provider, you see you have a lot of interaction with law enforcement because there's a lot of crime on,
Sure.
How
do you deal with all that?
Well,
you have a third party that sifts through for subpoenas and all that. How do you deal with
the subpoenas come here and we answer the subpoena. We won't answer it till it is a subpoena, but at least monthly we get something from the FBI. At least monthly, and it'll be different parts. And it's always
a room with a bunch of computers back here with some smart people that fish that out, or how's that work?
If I knew how it worked, I'd be doing that instead of sitting here. I have no idea, but they come up with the answers pretty quick. But and a lot of the crimes they're looking for are heinous crimes that we would all like our law enforcement to be concentrating on. And there's a lot of good people concentrating on that, but you see where you need that strong federal law enforcement capability to take care of that, because it's multi-state. We get lots of subpoenas from different states, not even contiguous. We'll get them from states that are 1,000 miles away, because in the wide world of the internet, stuff happens that shouldn't. And we oblige every subpoena. Once we get a subpoena, we serve them, give the information. We've seen, I've seen the same address subpoenaed by multiple organizations at the same time looking at it. So, I mean, there are people doing good work on that. I just want to say there's people really trying to do the right thing on it, but it's that's what we law enforcement concentrating on, is those heinous crimes.
That's right. I mean, again, you could probably convince me that he broke a law, but you have a hard time convincing me that's the right place to spend your time. That just strike. And I think you're seeing folks who were probably done with Trump. They're ready to vote for DeSantis and Bells. Like, now hold on a minute. This just don't strike you, right? And maybe throughout a trial that'll change. But I tend to think what'll change is this prosecutor getting their name in the paper more. What'll change?
Yeah. Well, and when you're in the districts the way we have them today in this world, if you're a Democratic, political hopeful in certain parts of the country, what better feather can you have in your hat right now than to say you indicted Donald Trump?
I'll tell you. And this is just I have no idea to know if this is true or not. I believe if Pat Conway was the person making that decision, he'd be like, boys, he's an ass, but we're not doing that. I believe if Jay Nixon was in that, he probably makes that decision. I believe there's a lot of Democrats that I respect that if they were in the seat, they had to make that decision. I think they go, he's a jackass, but that's not what we do here.
But do you see any of those subpoenas come, or any of those investigations come from this part of the country? No, because that's the way people here think. Yeah, I agree. Jay Nixon, you wouldn't be,
I just kind of, and again, I don't know. I'd really ask him, but I'm pessimistic. What do you think about him joining that no labels third party thing?
I think that's interesting. I think that and Manchin joining that, I don't know that it'll do. You never know. A third party is always a great
Nixon's
idea.
so tired of the progressives.
Yeah,
That is the bounce back to being tired of that.
you know, we've lost the way on both sides a little bit from, but the Ike Skeltons of the world, who were, a real issue based candidate,
Who, if he would have started politics today, would be a Republican.
probably so, because he wouldn't have won a primary.
No.
And you have some Democrats, or you have some Republicans the same way, that they would not run their primary.
What a great man for this state. I mean, the
Yeah.
things he did for this state. I mean, you could write a book. Actually, Scott Charton has wrote a book about all the things Ike Skelton did.
Yeah.
What an amazing life. And by the same token, there's plenty of politicians I admire that if they served their career, they'd be a Democrat.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting, evolving time. I want to thank you so much. Thank you for sponsoring the time we get to sit here and chat each week. Thank you for the hospitality. Sunday morning, This Week in Missouri Politics, here locally on the Fox affiliate here in St. Joseph. We'll have Senator Eric Schmidt on the show. Again, we talked about a bunch of issues, but none more than his breakdown of his game, his base clearing triple in the congressional baseball game. Well, thank you, Jim. Appreciate everybody. But got to thank Kelton, obviously. He's set up an entire, I don't even know what you would call it, like a whole computer camera, the Martin Scorsese of Savannah today. He's posted up over there. Thank you guys, and we'll see you Sunday for This Week in Missouri Politics.